Yeah, so what we see in practice is actually the rise of service-based business models. For example, companies such as John Deere with their ultimate uptime offering, or Caterpillar with Cat Connect technologies, and Volvo Fleet Management are in a way all relying on the existence of service capabilities in from their technology suppliers and dealerships and so on. And in these sort of arrangements, what we have is we have kind of like a triangle, a triad of three key actors. One is a manufacturer, then is a service supplier, and the customer, who are all performance and relationship interdependent. So because of this performance and relationship interdependence, practice is full of failed examples when one node in that triad, for example, failed to deliver what they were supposed to do, an entire triad, an entire service triad is actually affected. And what we see that most of these difficulties are essentially rooted in managers' naivety of the complexity of the control and coordination in such triads. And our motivation for this study was really rooted around that limited understanding of control and coordination in service triads, first from the practical standpoint of view, as well as from the academic. Because if you look at the most studies in these areas, they're mainly conducted from a position of a single actor in a network, predominantly a manufacturer. And because of that interdependence, we speculate that there will be other parties in a triad that will have essentially a commercial interest in being involved in control and coordination, rather than just surrender in the hands of the single managing actor. And ultimately, the question that we wanted to ask is how and why activities and relationships are controlled and coordinated in service triads. Yes, so methodologically our study is an inductive case-based study. What we did is actually we first developed a set of predetermined criteria to select our three cases. And each case comprised then from three actors: a manufacturer, a service provider, and the customer. And it is one thing that is worth stressing probably here is that securing the network level access is really not easy. And this is probably one of the reasons why we don't see too many qualitative network level studies. And quite frankly, we sweat a lot and made many phone calls before we managed to secure the access to all three triads. In a nutshell, how we did it was that we identified a solution, either through media or through our own network of the firms that we knew, and we identified then who's the provider of the solution, which we then approached, explained the project to them, and then we call these firms gatekeepers, and it was these firms that then essentially arrange our initial touchpoint contact with the potential customer and suppliers that were involved in the provision of particular solution. So in some cases it worked, in some cases it didn't work, so we tried several times, and we can learn you don't want to push too much, because firms need to recognize that the value of the project by themselves and participate on the voluntary basis, because as a consequence you get much better engagement and much richer data. So the first selected case was in industrial equipment manufacturing industry, where the manufacturer was providing availability of their equipment installed in the manufacturing plant of one of their customers. The second case was in commercial vehicle industry, where the manufacturer was providing availability of this commercial vehicle for their client. And the last case was in the defense industry, again, where the manufacturer was providing the asset availability to their customers. And in all three cases, we had associated service suppliers involved in the delivery of these solutions. So in total, we interviewed 33 managers from online firms in the three networks. We recorded all the interviews, we transcribed and analyzed the data. We then conducted within and cross-case analysis, and then formally captured our findings in the set of 9 propositions. So we have then translated or captured those 9 propositions in a formal theoretical framework of control and coordination in service triads. And it comprises of 4 key parts. First one is context, then how many mediators are in the triad, meaning how many firms are controlling and coordinating activities and relationships in a triad. Who are these mediators and how is control and coordination performed? And just briefly, what we discovered is actually that in line with our initial prediction, we found more than just one actor being responsible for mediating or controlling and coordinating in the service triads. We found that at least 2, but in some circumstances, context dependent, there will be all 3 actors that will be involved in these activities. Then another interesting thing we found is actually that customer is always the mediator. However, the customer's role is going to change in terms of the intensity of their engagement in control and coordination. And then who's the second mediator? It depends actually on relationship closeness between the customer and that second mediator. And then if we look at how control and coordination is actually performed, a couple of highlights. One is that a customer relies on another mediator but never relinquishes the control. The customer retains the ongoing control and coordination. The customer will control and coordinate indirect link via another mediator, and indirect link is controlled and coordinated always via a connected node. So this is kind of like in the nutshell the key findings, and of course significant more detail is actually then provided in the paper. So in terms of the managerial implications, what we are recommending is, first of all, particularly for the manufacturers who are transitioning from these traditional manufacturing-based outsourcing models to service-based models, they should really adopt the role of mediators. However, that adoption of the role of mediating role means that requires a mindset shift from that traditional self-oriented role to much more shared and system-oriented one, so that they are not only focused on performance of self, but also of the performance of others, of that entire system, with other words, the entire service triad. Furthermore, the effective control and coordination in service triads requires action to influence both direct and indirect relationships. So indirect relational influences matter for all actors in a triad, and by understanding and influencing these indirect links, managers can reduce the amount of information asymmetry, leading to consequently reduced risks on one side and as well as improved performance on the other. And lastly, the contextual factors that we have identified will shape managerial decisions on how and to what extent companies will actually then engage and get involved in this triadic interaction. So in terms of the future, with this research we provided theoretical foundations to shift from theory building to theory testing. We did exclude in our sample, for example, mixed and quasi-manufacturing services, which is something that future studies should actually look into and see whether our propositions hold also for those type of services. And lastly, and probably the most exciting avenue would be actually to test and refine our propositions on a larger network. This is particular because we know that manufacturers these days very often rely on multi-vendor solutions, and this require work with multiple suppliers for a delivery of solution, then either to one or to a different, several different customers. So overall, exciting times are ahead of us, and thank you very much for watching.